Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Levine, and to start with a brief introduction, I am a high school physics teacher who teaches in a high needs district in upstate New York. Many of my students come from very low socioeconomic status, and actually quite a few students within the school. There's a very large population of ESL students. Um, the region which I teach is actually a large refugee capital of the United States, and it so happens that we have many different students from many different ethnic backgrounds, all in one school, over 3,000 students, um, and it really makes for a nice, diverse learning environment. One thing that I've found, though, and part of the purpose of this study, is that many students have a disconnect between their performance in class and their willingness to do work and their performance on state exams. So part of my study's goal is to see if the flipped classroom approach can be a remedy to some of that. So talking about the general problem, just to sum it up, I've noticed that students of the current generation are kind of becoming less and less successful in traditional classroom settings. I've noticed that my test scores have really not improved as much as I would have hoped over the years. And you'd think with me becoming more comfortable with the content and maybe becoming better at teaching that content, that my students would be improving, not stagnating over the years. So I'm looking at a way to try and improve those test scores and improve my students' overall performance in my course by trying to find a method that works best for them. So my two research questions are, how does the flipped classroom approach affect student achievement within 11th and 12th grade high school physics classroom? And how does the flipped classroom model affect student motivation within an 11th and 12th grade high school physics classroom? One thing I noticed in terms of supporting literature is there's a lot of different case studies that have been done on the flipped classroom. However, each study has its own unique student population. So I'm trying to see what works best for my own students, and that's really the overall purpose of the study, is not to just repeat what other researchers have done in the past, but more importantly, to see if this is something that will actually work within my school and work for my students. Um, in terms of assessing them, I have several different assessment techniques. Uh, they really fall into two primary categories. The first one is the method in which we'll be testing their achievement, which is essentially achievement tests and quizzes. I have some samples here of this is just a quiz that I'll have for the first unit, and then a test that will also be given, and then here's a quiz for the second unit, and then a test that will be given. I think within the 6-week period, I will most likely get through these two units. If I find that I will end up getting more towards a third unit, I might actually add a little bit to this. But in short, I'm using the quizzes to test their their knowledge in a formative way, meaning during instruction to see if I need to adapt instruction so they can perform better on the tests. Um, and I'll be using the tests as actually a pre and post measure to just see how much knowledge they've gained throughout the entire unit. So they're both of the assessments themselves are made up of a similar um, set of questions in the sense where they've all been selected from past Regents exams. And this takes the bias out of my end of things, being the researcher, because I did not construct any of these questions. I just simply arranged them. Um, in terms of measuring the affective domain or the motivational aspect of my study, I have kind of another set of assessments, which I'll kind of fall into the motivational category, and that is student perceptions of physics survey, which I'll give them as a pre and post survey that has some questions attached to it. And then also during the actual study, I will be I'll be using an observation checklist to kind of just monitor individual students, and I'll also be using interview questions as a follow-up to ask students about how they really feel and try and get a better sense of their you know, the impact of this approach on student motivation. Um, that basically concludes my summary. I look forward to working with you all this semester, and I hope to be successful.